Walk into the United Nations General Assembly and you will see 193 seats. Visually, it looks like a crowded, egalitarian stage where dozens of independent nations chart the course of human history. Look at this animated map representing a controversial theory circulating inside the Kremlin. If you filter out every country controlled by an external power, the global stage fades away. You are left with exactly 4 sovereign landmasses: the United States, China, Russia, and India. This specific framework comes from Maxim Oreshkin, a highly influential geopolitical strategist and key advisor to Vladimir Putin. For Oreshkin and the Russian strategic establishment, having a flag and a border does not make you a sovereign nation. True sovereignty requires absolute autonomy. It means your defense protocols, your domestic economy, and your foreign policy are never dictated in someone else's capital. To understand how they wipe 189 countries off the board, we have to run the globe through a brutal 4-level stress test. Level 1 is state sovereignty. This is a basic political filter. Does a government actually rule its own people, or does it exist as a puppet state? A government failing this level operates as a proxy. In Islamabad, for instance, massive domestic institutions exist, but their policy outputs and political structures are routinely overridden and constrained by external creditors and foreign powers. The elimination accelerates at level 2, socioeconomic and defense sovereignty. This is where wealthy, highly developed global players face the filter. For decades, the European Union executed what we can call the comfort trade-off. They actively chose to outsource the vast majority of their military and defense responsibilities to the United States. By shedding the financial weight of a massive standing army, European nations redirected that capital to build incredible, high-functioning social welfare states. But that comfortable life sits on a fragile foundation. The moment an external supply chain breaks or a foreign security umbrella retracts, those economies panic. India operates on a completely different model under its current administration. If global exports freeze tomorrow, India's massive internal consumer market generates enough domestic friction to keep the country moving forward entirely on its own. Vast national wealth is useless in a crisis if your physical survival relies on another nation's military and your financial survival relies on another nation's consumers. Level 3 tests social and cultural sovereignty. Can a surviving nation maintain a distinct value-based identity, or does it assimilate into a louder global voice? Over the last 50 years, a steady wave of Americanization has quietly eroded the cultural boundaries of heavily aligned Western nations. The cinema and the music and the ideological exports of the United States often become the default culture of its allies. India survives this filter because it produces an overwhelming cultural gravity of its own. Through an enormous domestic cinema industry, native music, and regional cuisine, it actively exports a distinct cultural identity rather than passively absorbing a foreign one. That brings us to level 4, the most ruthless filter of the modern era: digital and data sovereignty. You cannot claim absolute independence if your nation's critical infrastructure, communication networks, and civilian data sit on foreign-owned servers. Data is the ultimate 21st century geopolitical frontier. Nations that rely on external tech monopolies to route their information instantly fail the test. To maintain your statehood today, guarding a physical stretch of dirt is useless if you cannot also control the invisible data flowing through the air above it. This shows the final result of the stress test. Only 4 massive nodes remain: the US, China, Russia, and India. But absolute sovereignty carries a terrifying burden. With no puppet master, none will bow to the other 3. Albert Einstein observed this exact dynamic when analyzing the behavior of great sovereign powers. His theory was simple. As long as fully independent, heavily armed states exist without a central global ruling authority above them to enforce the law, friction is guaranteed. War becomes mathematically inevitable. We see this violent friction playing out on the ground right now. When sovereign spheres of influence collide, the physical cost is catastrophic. The modern geopolitical board gives you 2 brutal options. Be a rule taker, trading away your absolute autonomy for a comfortable life under someone else's shield. Or you can be one of the 4 rule makers, paying for total independence by living under the constant, heavy threat of war.